Lingus, retired in 1993. But my earliest memory of interest in aeroplanes was going to Dublin Airport with my dad in 1960 to see the first TWA 707 land. I used to get Flight magazine. I knew more about what engines were on which aircraft. I was pretty well informed about airplanes as a teenager. Pilots have to keep a full record of every flight, every time, departure. Fantastic, because it's a full social record of my life, where I was, what I did almost every day for 30 years. 747 is so big compared with other aircraft. But if you were to stand the 747 on its tail, it will be 30 feet higher than Liberty Hall at the smallest version of it. And then it won't fit into O'Connell Street. The wingspan is greater than O'Connell Street. It is huge. And the great thing about 747 takeoff was it had this sense of drama and occasion. Like this was an event with music and orchestra, and you were going somewhere. You're going to climb up and settle in for hours and hours. This was an event. So Sarah and I are the obvious romance. I met Sarah on my very first transatlantic flight when I had converted onto 707s. And Sarah had been on the cabin crew for several months before. My interest in the skies was greatly enhanced by the fact, of course, that I studied with an Israeli painter in landscape painting in Italy. I began to up my game a little bit. Then I was very influenced by Patrick Kavanagh's poetry and Yeats' poetry. This one, which I called Impulse, based on Yeats' poem An Irish Airman Foresees His Death, which is particularly appropriate. He was killed in a military incident in Italy at the end of the First World War. I have insinuated myself in a self-portrait into the role of a pilot with Yeats' house, Gregory's Sopwith Camel aeroplane. The leather helmet I'm wearing belongs to a thing that encapsulates my memory and my being a pilot and being an artist all into one picture.
I'm Mubashir Sapru, or Mubsy for short. I'm an aircraft photographer. I've always been just obsessed with flying, obsessed with aircraft. This shot of the Aer Lingus A330, I think it's a nice, kind of encapsulates the different aspects of the fuselage. Pilots, they're always on the lookout for us. They know the different locations that we stand, because I think a few of them secretly do it themselves, and like you get a really good wave from them. The other thing that really adds to the dimension at Dublin is the Irish weather, which is really famous. And it works very much to your advantage as a photographer. The smoke trails that you see as a consequence of the lift, them coming off different parts of the aircraft, off the wingtips, they're coming off the trailing edges of the wing. Sometimes it's interaction between the wing and the fuselage. There's so much going on, which is why it's so fascinating to me. So I absolutely love the Boeing 747. I even have some parts from different 747s. I've got compressor blades from one of the engines, which is enormous. I can go back and look through airliners.net and see that piece of like fuselage. When did it fly around? When did it go into service? When did it come out of service? And for me, it's like keeping a piece of history. The first time I saw Concorde, I was stood at the end of the runway at Heathrow Airport. My uncle took me there as a surprise and he said, just watch what comes around the corner. And here was this like huge, weird looking thing that I had never seen before. I hadn't even seen any pictures of it before. And next thing you know, it turns around the corner, it lines up on the runway, full afterburners on, and just roared down the runway. And I still remember the fence was shaking. It was, my heart was beating really hard. And it was such a emotional response to a machine.
Like a double thunderclap. fairly serious bang-bangs. Lived along the south coast, got used to the sound of Concorde breaking the sound barrier twice a day. It was like sort of a double thunderclap very close together. By chance, just having finished the Leaving Cert, I saw an advertisement for a student air traffic controllers. So I decided I had a go at that. My early years in the 1950s, I lived with the British comics. Very interested in aviation, World War II aircraft. You know, my early years really in Shannon were the last of the piston engine aircraft and the beginnings of the jet aircraft. One that I really liked was the final derivative of the DC-8. I remember on many occasions at Shannon, watching the aircraft taking off along the runway. It needed a hell of a long runway to operate because it was heavily loaded with cargo. It was a stretched, maximum stretched DC-8. And you always wondered, is it going to make it really this time?